So thank you again, everyone, for joining us today. We're really excited to talk with you about some information about remote proctoring. Before we get started, I do want to take a quick minute and find out just a little bit about those of you who are with us today. So you're going to see a poll launch on your screen. We're just curious for those of you who are with us, how would you more closely identify which one of these options really is mostly going to be you? If none of the above, you can see there's an other, please put that into the chat so we can kind of see who's with us today. Just a little bit curious to see kind of who is joining us. So I'm going to go ahead and let this close up. Feel free. Awesome. All right, I'm going to end that poll here in just a second. Great. So it looks like we've got educators, program coordinators. We do also have some administrators and proctors. So thank you guys for joining us and for filling that out. I've got one other question today. I'm just going to launch a second poll here. What are you most hoping to take away? Because if I'm not going to cover it, and I should, I need to know. So go ahead and of the things we've listed here, and if there's something else not listed, please again post that in the chat so that we can make sure that we get that addressed during our session today. So give you guys just a minute to read through these options and put in your selections. Excellent. So all testing options, everything related to remote testing, what it looks like for candidates. These are all great responses. Thank you so much, everyone, for filling that out. That really helps us. So let's go ahead and get started. Now that we've learned a little bit about you, I just want to outline a little bit about NHA. We are able to continue to provide remote testing as we are the largest entry-level healthcare worker certification and education organization. There's a lot of shuns in that one in the industry. We're very excited to be able to continue this service. We currently have over 1 million certified candidates. So we're able to lead this industry, and we use those resources and information from our experiences, as well as learning partners, to continue to work to provide the best possible tools for you and for your learners, which does include remote proctoring. So though NHA provides a full suite of learning resources, including core learning, didactic content, and skills training for both practical and professional areas, today's purpose is to focus on, so those are the things we have there, is to focus on the 8 professions for the nationally accredited certification exams. And these begin with 5 of those 8 on that kind of practitioner side of healthcare, and the other 3 on the kind of more administrative side. So remote proctoring applies to all. Ooh, that went really fast. Hold on, let me go back. Remote proctoring does apply to all of these professions. So we're able to address this no matter which certification your learners are sitting for. So since launching remote testing in 2020, NHA has been able to provide remote testing for thousands of learners, and we've learned a lot since then, as we have all. Each year, we are continuing to streamline the process, and so we're going to focus on the best practices that we've learned for you and for your learners. Again, for the duration of today's session, please use the Q&A feature if you have any additional questions. We want to make sure we answer them as they come in. So we are going to address common questions, resources available, what we've learned on issues, and especially how to avoid them. We will do a brief walkthrough of what a remote test feels like for your candidates, and then go into some open Q&A. So I want to begin by doing a high-level review of all of NHA's testing options. Before we do that, I am going to put another poll out there. There we go. For those of you who are with us, what is your experience or history with remote testing? So there's a couple different options here. You should see that out on your screen. Have you used it before? Never used it before? If there's something else you'd like to say, let us know. Put that in the chat, please. Awesome. Thank you guys for filling that out. Looks like we have a pretty healthy blend of all of the above, which is fantastic. That's great. Anybody else want to ante in there? We got more than half of you. Perfect. Awesome. All right. So it looks like a pretty even blend across the board of never used it, need a refresher, and I'm looking to kind of perfect my experience. So fantastic. Thank you guys for that. So, NHA has always worked to provide flexible testing for our candidates in two parts. We call them first party or on site exams and third party or off site exams. The option to test on site has always been a possibility for most of NHA's exams, and it still is. So, if you're following the appropriate testing guidelines and proctor requirements, you can still proctor your learners in person on site today. If you haven't already and your institution can complete the testing center attestation, please feel free to do that. It's a great solution for you and for your testers. In person, institution based on site proctors go through NHA's proctor training from our website, and they have to follow compliance guidelines for conflict of interest. So it's a big part of that. Your on site proctors are not approved for remote testing. So if you have a candidate who needs to test through a remote exam, connect with your NHA representative. We can transition that individual's application to a different testing method. But proctoring through a remote platform like Zoom or Teams or WebEx or any other online meeting platform is not an approved process for your on-site proctors. Now, NHA has been partnered with PSI testing for secure off-site testing for several years. For institutions or exams that are required to use or need to use off-location or third-party testing, PSI has always been an excellent option. Testing sites follow strict protocols and requirements, and they have open locations around the country. Locations are visible from their website as well as during the scheduling process for your learners. All of NHA's 8 accredited exams are approved to test depending on location availability. Now, since spring of 2020, we have offered the option for candidates to test through PSI with remote proctoring. Just like with their location-based testing, this method will be leveraged entirely through the PSI process and PSI proctors. So again, this is not something that you will run on site. With live remote proctoring, you can provide your candidates the option to test when they can, relieving your institution of the burden of proctoring or perhaps having to drive to a distant location, depending on where you're at. Now, this is not something that your staff can proctor. Only PSI's trained personnel who can monitor candidates remotely through their secure platform are allowed to do this. At this time, also, there is no additional charge to leverage remote testing for your candidates. The reason why only PSI staff can proctor is due to what I mentioned related to compliance and security. So PSI remotely monitors in real time with a professionally trained proctor employed through PSI. Proctors are prepared to actively intervene, provide warnings to help prevent prohibited behaviors, and if necessary, terminating exams if the integrity of the process is in question at any time. Candidates are expected to follow ethical and professional behaviors throughout the testing process. There's a full checklist of FAQs available through the NHA website. It is critical for your candidates to understand that the exams are not less secure when proctored remotely, or that they're a take-home test, for example. NHA certification exams remain accredited, high-stakes exams governed by a certification board and requiring strict exam security protocols regardless of the delivery method. NHA is constantly reviewing the testing process, monitoring any possible testing abnormalities, results, and reported behavior of candidates or proctors to ensure test security and administration best practices are implemented. As I mentioned, you will not be proctoring your candidates through remote testing. PSI remote proctors are PSI employees, again, with specific training, expectations, and technology to maintain that safety and integrity of the exam process. So only trained, qualified PSI personnel are allowed to proctor through this method. So this means you can be sure that all of the necessary security is in place. Again, at this time, there is no additional fee for remote proctored exams. To help you with this process, NHA has created a series of tools that you can access directly through your administrative login, which is what we're seeing here. Scrolling down on your page will show you some of the most used how-to resources, again, geared around where we may be in the calendar year. These might walk you through administrative steps that you need to manage your account and learners. So right in this list, you'll see the Knowledge Center, and that's where you'd go to access where you can search all of our resources. So you might see an option here for proctoring the exam, but this is specifically for that on-site testing with a live proctor and not applicable for remote tests. So instead, you'll want to use that search tool right at the top to search for remote exams. This will include any of the supplemental tools to help with the PSI testing process from start to finish, including videos and guides on scheduling, rescheduling, using your resources, viewing reporting. Even items on what to expect on test day and troubleshooting guides are available for you as well as for your candidates. Okay, so we're going to just do another quick question here. Let's see here. Just wanted a temperature check. We're going to find out. So what we've learned so far, who is approved to proctor a remote proctored exam? I'm curious what you've taken away from what we've covered so far. A remote proctored exam. All right. Give you just a quick minute. Anybody else want to put your 2 cents in? Okay. So perfect. Most of you have done that. Thank you so much. I want to make it really, 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 really clear. The only people who can proctor a remote proctored exam is a trained remote proctor through PSI. An NHA staff member cannot, anyone who's an instructor cannot, not even proctors who typically proctor on site. Only trained remote proctors through PSI are allowed to remote test, remote proctor. So make that really clear. Okay, thank you guys for that. Appreciate it. Okay, so now let's take a look at what this looks like, right? The best practices for applying, how we do this. So the process for your candidates to apply for their exams is as easy as it's always been. We know that there are questions on scheduling of those approved exams. It's one of the biggest calls that we receive, as well as PSI. So when your learners are ready to test, they will need to log into their account at nhanow.com. When they do that, they might have a banner at the top of the screen that says you have, oh, well, this is applying. So they need to apply for their exam. So they get started right there in the middle. It says apply for your exam. You can click apply for your exam over on the left-hand side as well. So the only real difference from this testing on-site to PSI is whether or not there's an exam date available. So during the application itself, they don't actually pick the exam date. They schedule that afterwards. So applying for this exam is simple. It's user-friendly. There are steps that guide candidates through each of the steps. They follow the prompts. And again, we've got how-to guides, videos, and resources for all of these that you can provide to them or that they can pull themselves from their own platform. Now, when to apply for the NHA exam is really based on your program and requirements. So your learners must apply for the exams themselves because during this process, they sign an attestation of readiness. This is the legal document that outlines that they will be eligible to sit for this exam by the date of their test, as well as accountability to professional behavior and ethics. We want to be sure that there is ample time for scheduling, so we'd recommend that applications begin around 4 weeks prior to the intended exam date to ensure that there is availability for scheduling. Essentially, that's the best timeline. It's helpful to be mindful also of the standard peak testing times in a year. Think about those end of semester typical dates. So for example, right now we're entering into that end of first semester. So like November, December might be a little bit harder to schedule if we have a smaller time period. Scheduling is actually fairly easy because PSI has hundreds of open sites across the country, and remote testing can begin as soon as within the next 24 hours. Remote testing also allows for 24-hour calendaring options to help accommodate unique schedules. But please keep in mind for PSI exams, candidate applications are only active to schedule for 6 months. So if they apply too early, their exam application will expire, possibly requiring a new application and exam fee, which is why we recommend that a month timeline prior to the test date for an ideal timeline. One of the big questions we also get is related to eligibility for the exams, which can be found online in the NHA Candidate Handbook. This will outline the academic or work experience expectations that are the minimum qualifications, as well as any additional requirements based on the exam or the candidate's testing prior to high school graduation, potentially, or program completion. The handbook outlines any possible pathways to eligibility, and again, is readily available on the website. It also includes steps for instructors or administrators who may want to also earn their NHA certification. That pathway is a little bit different. In addition, right from our homepage of the website, there are a couple ways to learn more about the certification itself, as well as eligibility. So if you go to that same Get Certified feature, you can follow the pathway to check your eligibility. And by answering just a couple of questions, answering honestly, this will then provide confirmation of the eligibility or ability to test. NHA has provided this option to test for candidates with accommodation needs as well. So for any candidate who may have an ADA compliant request with appropriate documentation, such as an IEP or 504 on file, or appropriate information from a physician. Once they have an active application, they can submit a request through the NHA's Help Center in the Forms field. So going to Forms is where they can access all of the different forms, specifically though in this instance, the one on accommodations. This is going to outline and provide a digital download to submit the request. An approved accommodation can be applied to that candidate's account for a full year and will apply to any exam type as long as that exam is in the same institution and format. So if there's shifting formats, then they would have to do a second one. All accommodations are not available for every testing option. There are accommodations available for remote testing, but we want to make sure that we, keep that compliance. So NHA will provide information based on the testing modality when the accommodation is approved. This is also where any appeals or on-site exam incidents, or especially remote incidents issues, can be submitted. So we can talk a little bit about this as we move forward. So the next phase of this process is scheduling a third-party or off-site exam. This is something that your learners would do once an application has been completed and approved. They can schedule their exams directly through the NHA website. They can either select that banner at the top of the screen that says you have something to schedule, or they can go back to the Apply button to access their application's main page. They then select the orange Schedule with PSI button. Now, this is going to take them out of the NHA website and into PSI's scheduling platform. Learners will see the option to see an overview, FAQs, and test instructions. To begin scheduling, they need to select View Available Tests. They then will see the exam they've been approved for. They need to select that exam that they want to schedule, and then they'll see an option to review FAQs around that exam, or instructions and videos on what to expect, depending on the test method that they select. When they've read everything they want, when they're ready, they can continue on to actually booking or scheduling that exam. Learners will see a navigation back walking them through each step, up at the top, a bar walking them through each step of the process. They're not done until this is completed. So they can select which test format they want, the live proctor or on-site exam, and whichever they choose. So remote proctor, on-site, so we see on-site test center, and online proctor, that would be live, is what that's labeled as. So whichever they choose, they can return to reschedule and shift that modality if they want, as long as rescheduling occurs at least 24 hours in advance of the scheduled exam. So let's walk through the remote proctored scheduling process. They'll be asked to identify a country and a time zone. This is actually really important. They need to select the correct time zone to ensure that they arrive on time for their exam. Scheduling the wrong time zone is not grounds for an excused absence on a test. So if they're not sure, we want to do a quick online search just to double check. Once selected, they'll see the option to choose a date and time. When they've chosen their preferred testing timeline, they can then confirm to book that particular time slot. We're going to talk a little bit more on this in a minute, but not checking compatibility prior to testing for the computer is one of the biggest issues with candidate exam success. They only need to do this on the device they'll be testing with, but it's best to do this before scheduling to ensure that this method of testing is right for them. The other piece related to remote testing is that one of the biggest avoidable errors is ensuring that candidates, again, know their time zone. You think they should, but they don't always, and missing an exam time does forfeit the test fees. It's best for candidates just to take a moment to make sure they double check it. PSI's options should be very clear, but one thing you can do to help them is confirm after their scheduling the label for their time zone. Once ready, oops, sorry, that was too fast. So once ready, they then review everything. They confirm the terms and conditions for testing, and then they can confirm their booking. So no matter the method for PSI testing, a final confirmation page will load that will allow them to print their confirmation content, though it is always available to them through their NHA login. That navigation bar should now be fully complete, and they can return back to the NHA website for more details or next steps. Once completed, they will also receive an email containing all details, including testing method, if applicable, location, date, time, what to have ready. It will include information on rescheduling, as well as what to have ready for the test. So this includes arriving early, as well as what type of government-issued photo ID is approved for their testing method. They must have a physical copy of this ID, not a picture on their phones or a printed copy. And in addition, military IDs are not approved for remote testing. Due to federal regulations, it's illegal to take a picture of a military ID. So during the accessing process on exam day, they have to take a picture of that ID for the remote proctor, which is why that's not allowed. They have to have a different version if they're going to test remotely. However, your military IDs are approved for on-site or location-based testing. But again, remote testing is not applicable. They can do a passport, a green card, a driver's license, any of that government-issued photo ID. Scheduling and rescheduling are two of the most common questions that we get. And we just saw how easy it is to schedule a test. And again, there's walkthroughs to help you with that. It is just as simple to reschedule or change that exam date. No matter which option your candidates choose, they can reschedule their exams or change testing modalities anytime, as long as it occurs at least 24 hours before the scheduled test date. Anytime within that 24-hour window, after that 24-hour window, they may forfeit the exam fee. So to reschedule, they just log back into their account. They select that same apply button. This will take them back to their exams details page. And this page allows candidates to review all of the details on their exam. If they want to reschedule or change their testing modality, they pick the schedule with PSI button. And will take them back through the process of selecting their preferences as well as FAQs. So here they can cancel or rebook their appointment. As an administrator, you actually have the ability to monitor your candidate applications and scheduling in the View Exam Applications feature on the left-hand navigation bar of your account. We highly recommend that you monitor these so you can make sure everything is running smoothly. Here you can see both off-site as well as on-site applications. Your PSI testers will be in the box at the top labeled third-party applications. Remember, all third-party or off-site exams are found here, whether they're scheduled to test at a PSI location or remotely. You can monitor their exam statuses, even completion dates based off of whatever filters you set. The booking status and booking date columns will relay for you where they are in the process, including if the exam was missed, scheduled, or completed. You can also download this into an Excel spreadsheet for easier filtering or editing. So that's how you monitor their progress. Now, if you have a candidate who's set up to test at your location, but not through PSI, and due to extenuating circumstances, they need to shift to a PSI testing location or remotely, just let your NHA representative know so they can be sure to check in with you and take care of that candidate situation. Okay, so I'm just going to do a quick poll here, just a gut check with you. There we go. So far, how comfortable are you with the remote testing process? We are going to get into FAQs and best practices here in a little bit, things to avoid, but just having gone through what we've done so far, how are you feeling? Feeling okay? Just going to get a little temperature check. Okay, got about half of you there. Great. And it's okay, we're not done. So we've got more to cover. All right, I'm going to go ahead and close this up. It looks like a lot of people are feeling better, feeling comfortable. Still have some questions, thinking we're getting it. Great. If not, or if, let us know. Again, we have our Q&A here, so post your questions in the Q&A. Our team is waiting and ready to answer for you. All right, perfect. Let's go ahead and get into the kind of key thing of how to have a successful exam, right? This is really the big stuff. What are the things that we can avoid? So we're constantly working to streamline this process and have identified that of the thousands of students and learners who have tested in a remote process, roughly 94% have found their experience to be good or excellent. But we have also identified those issues that have seemed to cause common issues or a delay in testing. So these are the 6 most common problems found when testing remotely. And most of these come down to a simple lack of preparation and can be easily addressed. So we're going to review each one of them and what we can do to make sure that your candidates are prepared. Starting with that compatibility check I mentioned. The link for this is readily available on NHA and PSI's website and is provided directly to the candidate several times through the scheduling and confirmation process. Once learners grant permission for the check to access their webcam and microphone, the system will do a run-through of the device. This only needs to occur on the computer that they will be using on exam day, but absolutely should occur before test day. A key piece of this is also understanding the difference between a PC, a Mac, or a Chromebook for testing. Each operating system may require a slightly different setup, so take note of the system check requirements. Now, depending on the device, an outline will occur with information regarding device compatibility. As with this instance, though I have a warning, its outline says that I will likely not have an issue when running a remote exam. I can save these results or view the tips to improve my experience. So the compatibility check. There's my my microphone tips. That was the issue that I had. If the system the computer is testing on is connected to a VPN, this can prevent the remote test from running on exam day. These situations most commonly occur when testing at a campus or using an institution-provided device. Firewalls and VPNs may prohibit the additional screen sharing features required for a secure testing platform. This is something that can be overcome, but will require a little bit of help. If your candidates have to test through a VPN-based network or device, you will need to consult with the IT department at your institution to ensure the device for testing is compatible and meets the technical requirements. Among the many resources that we've created to assist with this, NHA actually has an institution checklist, FAQ, and technical guide, which provides you and your IT team with PSI's IP address and platform IP range. Now, if you don't know what a lot of that means, you're in good company because I absolutely don't, but your IT team should. So this technical guide is available on our website for remote testing. So it's important to help to prepare with your IT department or technical team before exams occur to make sure the security, firewall, and hardware all allows testers to do everything that needs to be done. Now, this is only a necessary step if your candidates are testing using an institution-provided device or might be testing with remote testing, but through a VPN. So to address this also, if you have more than one candidate who wants to test on site, they need to be testing individually. If you have the capacity for multiple candidates to test simultaneously, then maybe we would look at testing through the standard on-site process with a physical and live proctor. When looking at group testing, for example, remote testing is not a great or really compatible platform for that process due to security measures. Also, just to confirm, though applicable to use for NHA's website and resources, tablets, phones, and other handheld devices are not compatible to run a remote proctored exam. Again, be sure candidates review the technical requirements for the kind of device they'll be using for their actual exam. Okay, next button is no working webcam. So remote testing will work on any modern Windows or Mac operating system, including Chromebooks, but having an active webcam is vital. The webcam can either be built into the device or externally attached, as long as it can be moved to complete the room scan on the day of testing. Not having a working webcam is one of the most common issues candidates are facing, and it's something that is checked during that compatibility checker. So if they do have a webcam, then if they do not have a webcam, then remote testing is probably not the best option for them. Now, to overcome this, some programs have attachable webcams available for checkout by their learners needed for scheduling. But again, no matter if it's built into the device or external, it is a mandatory part of the remote testing process. Unfortunately, having weak or unstable internet connectivity can cause an issue with remote testing. Candidates should always be sure that they have a reliable connection for the duration of their exam. And since no other electronics are allowed in the testing space, a hotspot from a cell phone won't be applicable. If they don't have strong internet from home, then they can look to test at any secure location. I personally do not have a space in my home to test remotely based on the room requirements, and I would have to go off-site or to another place to do so securely. This is a piece of the discussion to have with your candidates if they are looking for remote testing. Now, in any instance of a sudden loss of internet or any other issues during a test, then a remote proctoring event form, which we looked at earlier, should be submitted for review. Again, these are in the forms link on our website. We also fully understand that things can happen beyond anyone's control. So don't worry. NHA and PSI have the ability to review and react appropriately to an exam that ends in an untimely fashion, whether that be due to acts of misconduct or acts of weather. That's exactly what the remote testing incident form is for. Ensuring that a valid and physical government issued photo ID is available is another part of the requirements for testing. So all approved forms of ID are on the candidate confirmation email, as well as in our success guides and FAQs. The first and last name on the ID must match that of the candidate account with NHA. Otherwise, the proctor will not allow the exam to begin. So if any candidates use a nickname on their accounts or their name has changed recently, they can contact NHA's Help Center to get it updated prior to testing. The ID must include a photo, and remember that military IDs are not allowed for remote testing. So for all of these steps, NHA has resources to help identify what must be involved in this process. It includes ensuring the space is set up, the IDs, the FAQs. We know that the candidates have questions, so we want to make sure that those are addressed, ensuring also that their family knows that they need to be left alone for the duration of the exam is kind of important, right? These are small things that can help. The exam time is not a flexible option. Not showing up to a test will forfeit the exam fee, and require a new application and registration for the candidate. They can begin the setup process prior to the scheduled time. We recommend no less than 15 minutes before. If the plan is to log in at the time of the exam, then they do run the risk of being late due to the sign-in process. They can start as early as 30 minutes prior, but that doesn't mean their test will start early, but it will help make sure that it can start on time. 30 minutes is a long time to wait. So that's why we really suggest around 15 minutes is the right window. Okay, so before I'm going to just ask another quick poll here. So having looked at these 6 items, and I've listed them out here in the poll, what do you think is going to be the one that your learners might struggle the most with? Just gut check. What do you think? What do you think is going to be the biggest issue that they may have as they're doing a remote test? Give you guys just a minute. Okay, we got about half of you. Anybody else want to guess or think or offer in your thoughts there? Okay, let's go ahead and end that. All right, so let's go take a look if your guess matches the top issues across the country. So of these 6 common issues, the 3 that seem to be the hardest for candidates are connectivity, compatibility, and missing the exam. So every item on this list, including these top issues, are avoidable with just a little bit of preparation. So remember, just because this is an exam it's possibly taken at home doesn't mean it's not something to be taken seriously. But a tiny bit of preparation goes a long way to a successful exam day. So we've covered what it is, how to schedule, and the biggest issues that we face, but we're going to take a little bit of time to look at what it really might feel like for the learner. And that starts with having the right testing environment. We have a checklist for this on our success guide, but it's pretty simple. Unless approved through accommodation request, the room must not have any other electronics other than the testing device. So no cell phones, cameras, tablets, recording tools. The space needs to be in a room with a door that closes and a desk free from clutter, including drinks. No one can enter during the test, and if the candidate leaves, their exam will close. So be sure their family knows to leave them alone. Bathroom breaks not allowed during a high stakes exam. They can have 2 pieces of blank paper and 1 pencil if they choose. They will be reviewed by the proctor and will be required to tear up and dispose of when the exam is complete. So a good rule to remember is that if it's not allowed in a testing center, it's not allowed for remote testing, right? The only exception is for NHA's billing and coding exam, which requires the use of coding manuals during a test. So they obviously have to be there, but that's the only exception that we have. The Google Chrome web browser is the approved platform for remote testing. If the device to be used for the test does not have this browser option, it should be loaded in advance. As I mentioned, on the day of the exam, it's important to begin early. We recommend around 15 minutes before time, though they can do 30 minutes. It does not mean they will start early. It just means they'll have ample time to get logged in. All of these resources, as I mentioned, are on our website through that Get Certified dropdown and the Remote Proctoring selection. So this is where we can find all of those tools, what to do prior to exam day, the tech check, FAQs, even walkthrough videos. Candidates need to be sure they have everything set up in advance, and all of these resources are here. So on test day, they just log in to their accounts at NHA and they begin with this exam check-in. They click on the green banner up at the top of their screen to begin the process, and then they'll get the schedule with PSI option. They can then locate from that page the exam details and launch exam. They should follow the prompts to download the Chrome extension, which is similar to what we did today for a Zoom meeting. Though they should have already completed the compatibility check, they could go ahead and do so again. Again, this is one of the most common issues for remote exams not running smoothly. And remember, prior to today, anyone who's using a VPN to test would need to have confirmed that that's been addressed. They must review and agree to the rules of the exam session, which include the status of the room, mobile devices, and what to do if the browser becomes temporarily disconnected, and then they agree to continue. They will need to have their government issued photo ID ready. A copy or photo of that ID is not sufficient. They have to have the physical ID with them. And remember, military IDs are not acceptable for remote testing. So when ready, they start the ID verification. Using the webcam associated to their testing hardware, they then take a photo of that physical ID. They can retake it until it's clear and legible, meeting the exam testing requirements. Having enough light in the room kind of helps with that process. Candidates then take a photo of themselves to verify that the ID and person taking the exam are the same. To qualify that the exam room meets minimum standards, candidates then use their webcam to scan the room. This must run for about 30 seconds, showing that there's no security violations. The proctor will not begin the exam without a full scan. They might even request additional images, such as under an external keyboard, to be taken. This could also include removing glasses or a hat that might create shadows on the candidate's face. Once they're finished, they can confirm their check-in right there. And then the proctor will review the data. This can take a few minutes to complete. So the proctor may require that unapproved options be removed from the room prior to beginning the exam. Pardon me. Remember, this is not something that you do, but something that is run through PSI with only trained PSI staff as a proctor. Once they're reviewed, they can release the exam and the candidate can click Start. This needs to occur within 15 minutes of the originally scheduled exam time. So again, that's why we recommend starting early. Then this test begins. The proctor will be available throughout the duration of the exam through a live chat feature. They will not have voice contact, nor will they answer questions related to the test, but they're available to address possible tech issues or concerns. After answering the final question, they then can start with end test. When they're ready to be done, the proctor will then confirm the intent to finish, and a completion message will direct them to return back to their NHA portal, where they'll see their result within 2 business days. They will get a completion email once that result is there, whether they're successful or unsuccessful, whether it's a passing score or not. It will direct them back to their NHA login to view their score. In that same time, scores will load for you in the results button on the left-hand side of your NHA login. Now, you're not going to get an email, but you can check their statuses there. You can see individual names, scores, if they've earned their certification. A passing score is 390 or higher out of a maximum of 500. Any exam listed here that may be missing a score usually means that the candidate rescheduled. But it will tell you if the exam didn't occur for any reason, right? Whether it was a missed exam or not. To confirm if it is, you can go back to that application screen where you can see the application status if it's a missed exam. So after earning their certification, we'd love to hear their story. So please encourage your students and learners to let us know how it went. So we're going to just do a quick recap of some of the resources for you and then get to some Q&A. So if you're unsure if you should offer remote testing, please connect with your NHA contact. If you're not sure who that is, that survey link we're going to post in just a minute. Type it in there and someone will be reaching out to you right away. You can also continue to monitor the NHA website for announcements, updates, resources. Our team has been working hard to continue to provide additional tools. And then our remote testing space for all of those FAQs, checklists, etc. We want to continue to bring you all the things that you need. And you'll be getting a recording of today's webinar as well that you can share with your learners or revisit once we're done. So as I mentioned, we've been recording. We are going to get to Q&A here for our final kind of 15-ish minutes. We're going to be posting in the chat those 2 survey links. Remember, you can fill them both out. One is on the content from today, and the other is kind of an informational survey form. One is a $50 gift card submission for a raffle, and the other is a $500 gift card. So it's a great idea to go ahead and open those links as soon as they're available to you in the chat, and go ahead and fill those out so we can make sure that you get into that raffle, right? You don't want to miss out. So I want to take a minute just to thank you all. I know that was a lot to cover, and we're here to answer questions. So please, I haven't seen a whole lot of questions come in, but I'd love to know, if you do have questions, you can raise your hand, you can type it in the Q&A. We're here to answer those questions, and I want to thank you guys so much for just being with us here today. So I see there's a hand raised. Do we have a question in the chat or Q&A?
Hey Laura, this is Hannah. You know what? There was only one question that we got figured out directly. It was around if in the future there will be a charge for live remote proctoring. But other than that, it's been quiet. I think
Oh.
everything you're saying is good.
Well, so I hope so. Okay, well, now is the time. Those of you who are with us here today, Lauren just posted that first survey. That's the $50 gift card, and you should now see that $500 gift card raffle. So please just open those links right on up right now. Fill them out. We can also always do one-on-one training if you have that, or if you need that. That is something you can request through that first survey link. But does anybody, I don't see any hands up in the list here, so we're going to go ahead and move on to saying thank you, everyone, so much for being here, and for asking questions, right? Helping your learners to just access that better future. We're all very, very excited. I see that there is a question in there on, is there a test proctors can take? So if you for on-site testing. So let's I'm just going to go back to one of the slides we did right at the very, very beginning of the different kinds of testing that NHA has available. So on-site, or what we label as first-party testing, would be if you are proctoring live. You would have a proctor physically in the room with your candidates. And then third-party would be anything handled by PSI. If you have questions for on-site testing, first-party testing, we are hosting a webinar for proctors coming up. Actually, let's see, is it this month or next month? I'm just going to pull that. I'm going to post that link here in the chat if I can find it. But we are having a coming up, I think it's in early November. So keep an eye out in our webinars page, and I'm going to post that link here in the chat for everybody. If you are interested in information on that, it's going to be a very informative session coming up in early November. So if you have questions for on-site proctoring, let us know. I don't see any other questions that came in. So I want to say thank you all so much for joining us today. This recording will be sent out to everybody who registered, and I hope you have a wonderful afternoon. Thanks so much.